So I'm going to start off today with a couple questions, kind of silly-ish or just doesn't really matter, and then one that's more serious, and that'll lead us into our topic. Have you ever watched a TV show or a movie, and there was some character or group of people that you found yourself, they were just so bad. You couldn't wait. You're not maybe a person who wants to see people get hurt, but there was just that part inside of you that wanted justice, that wanted things to be made right, and you just couldn't help but look at it and say, I just can't wait for them to get it. But you didn't just want to see them get it. You wanted them to know it was coming when they got it. Have you ever had that in a movie or a TV show? I think one of the classic examples are some of the old Disney ones. They'd have the villain, and it wouldn't just be that they'd get it, they'd fall. Because A, it was safer for kids. They only showed the fall, not the splat. But also, you could see it in their eyes as they were falling. It was that, this has all come back. All my evil deeds have been summed up in this moment. That kind of thing is what I'm talking about. That's the sillier, less important side. But let me ask you this. Have you ever been in that situation? Have you ever been the one who is waiting for something to be made right? Waiting for that injustice to be made whole. You're waiting for, when does that bad get its due? When do I ever get to see the payoff? Not that I want to see somebody hurt. I'm hurt and I want it to be set right. If you've ever been in that position or you're ever going to find yourself in that position ahead of time, I hope that through the story that we go through today and some observations we make, I hope that they'll be helpful to you either now or in the future if you find yourself in that spot. Because we're going to continue our series that we're calling Thrones. Just to remind you or get you caught up, we've been going through the narrative of the scriptures. We started at the beginning of the Hebrew scriptures. We're all the way to this period that we're calling Thrones. There's the kingdom of Israel was united at one point under Saul, David, and his son Solomon. Then it broke into two. There's the northern kingdom called Israel, the southern kingdom called Judah. And for the last few weeks, we've been in a time period that just has so much written about it because there was this horribly powerful, just this weird power couple named Ahab and Jezebel. And they are, if you want to ask who's the worst, they're the worst. Ahab was bad to begin with. Then he married Jezebel, who came from another country, and she was worse. And together, they were the epitome of everything we've ever accused the other side politically of being. They were horrible. You would not want these people in charge of anything, let alone government. And yet here they were. Oppression, it's hard to overstate that they were the worst. To the degree we saw a story a couple weeks ago where there's a plot of land that the king wants because it's convenient and he likes it. And he goes to the person who owns it and says, sell it to me. And the guy says, no, it's my family's property. I've lived here. I want to die here. Pass it to my kids. And for the audacity of saying no to the king and not giving him something they wanted, the king and queen, in concert, has this man killed, innocent man, just killed because he said no. And they take possession because I wanted it. And who are you to stand in my way? This is the legacy of their kingdom. And we saw it start to come back a few weeks ago where we saw Ahab die in battle. And as he had lived his entire life, even the last day of his life, he gets one more warning from a prophet. There had been Elijah, Elisha, Micaiah on that fateful day, other unnamed prophets who just gave him messages saying, just telling you the way you're going is bad, and if you keep going down this path, it's not going to end well. This is your chance. Turn around, fix it. Refused. Even the morning says, don't go to battle. This is not good. If you do this, you're going to die. I'm not going to die. I'm going to disguise myself so nobody knows who to shoot at. Gets killed anyway. It's just, this is the epitome and the legacy of Ahab and Jezebel. Ahab's gone. Now, one of Ahab's sons reigns in the northern kingdom. His name is Joram. And through twist of fate, his grandson Ahaziah is the king of Judah, the southern kingdom, because Ahab and Jezebel's daughter married into the southern kingdom line. We saw that a couple weeks ago as well. So now it's not just bad, it's spreading. And so both kingdoms are, their people are just waiting for somebody to make it right. For someday, all this bad to be fixed. And today is that day. So we've set the scene. Jezebel is the queen mother. Her son is king in Israel. Their grandson, king in Judah. And this sets the stage for where we begin in 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 1, if you want to follow along. If not, it'll be on the screen here in the room and on the bottom of the screen for those of you online. Starts out saying, meanwhile, Elisha the prophet had summoned a member of the group of prophets. Get ready to travel, he told him, and take this flask of olive oil with you. Just so you know, this was a very normal thing for a prophet to do. They would take some olive oil and use it to anoint somebody for a position, a purpose, a task, a calling, whatever it would be. They would take some olive oil, pour it over their head as a symbolic, you're chosen for this particular thing. So this prophet says, okay, well, I'm ready. Where am I going? What am I going to do? And Elisha says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to Ramoth Gilead and find Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. If you're following along, Jehoshaphat was the name of a king in the southern kingdom. This is not his son. Apparently, for some reason, Jehoshaphat was a popular name. I don't know why. It's a little weird. But it's less popular now, so if you find yourself in need of a boy name, it's available. So Elisha sends his prophet, tells him who to go, and sends him to Ramoth Gilead. This is not a safe place, which is perhaps why Elisha didn't go, or he just didn't feel like it. I don't know. Elijah didn't want to do the same job either. We saw that before. But he says, go to Ramoth Gilead. It's a war zone to a certain degree. It's a battleground. It's kind of a border area between two different kingdoms that have been warring for years, including over this same town or region. It's where Ahab went to battle, where he died. The current king of Israel is back in Jezreel because he got hurt at a battle at this place. So he's like, I'm not sending you to a great place, but go anyway. And so it's like, well, that's weird. It says, go there to the battleground and find Jehu. Jehu is a commander of the armies of the northern kingdom. He says, this is what I want you to do. Excuse me, verse 3, call him into a private room away from his friends, pour the oil over his head, and say to him, this is what the Lord says. I anoint you to be the king over Israel. And this is where it gets funny. Then open the door and run for your life. Like, is this why you don't want to go? Because it's not safe? And Elisha has this record of having clairvoyance, of seeing things. Like, is there something else you want to tell me about my job that I don't just have to go when you're not? I have to run? No, I go, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I can imagine almost it plays out like this. So the prophet does it, and I can almost imagine, you ever play tag? Have you ever been playing tag and you're it, but somebody doesn't know you're it? So you just kind of try to be nonchalant, like, hey, you see them anywhere? And you kind of go over and then tag and run. This is what I imagine this guy does. He goes, Jehu, I need to have a meeting with you, takes him into this room and goes, you're king, and tears off the door, out the door. It's insane. Like, imagine what Jehu is feeling, because it's weird, but it's not just that weird. Jehu's been meeting with officers. They're in a battleground. He's the commander, and he's meeting with other officers. So in comes this guy and says, I have a message for you. It needs to be private. It's as close to a DM as they got there. It's like, just go into the room, okay? And the officers are hearing a little commotion. They don't hear much. But next thing you know, the door opens, and here comes this crazy guy running out the door. And I imagine it freaked him out because one of them looks at it and says, Jehu comes out of the room, oil dripping down from his head, to his fellow officers, verse 11. And one of them asked him, what did that madman want? I can almost imagine it's one of those, like, you know, your eyes follow the guy who's running. It's like, what did that guy want? See his oil dripping down. Is everything all right? Because this is weird. And Jehu, I don't know if he's trying to process it. I think he's probably just got a smirk on his face because we'll see Jehu in a second. But he's like, oh, you know how a man like that babbles on. Prophets, am I right? He's dismissing the whole thing. But there's something in his countenance that lets them know that there's more to the story. So verse 12, they say, you're hiding something. Tell us. Don't play this game where if fine, you want us to ask, I'll ask what's going on. James says, oh, well, he said to me, this is what the Lord says. I have anointed you to be king over Israel. This is very similar if you remember what happened to David. There's a current king, David gets anointed, and David says, oh, that's an amazing blessing. Thank you, God. I'll be happy to wait until the current king is out of the way, and then I know I'm next when the time comes. Jehu is not David, because the next thing that happens is he and the people that were with him, verse 13, quickly spread out their cloaks on the bare steps, blew the ram's horns, shouting, Jehu's king. Like, why wait? Today's a great day to be king. I just can't wait, never mind, to be king. But Jehu's smart. Jehu knows you cannot take your time because it's a military coup and it's on. But you can't wait. You have to strike fast. So he does. Verse 16, then Jehu got into a chariot and rode to Jezreel to find King Joram. Again, we talked about earlier, he was lying there wounded, but he's not alone. King Ahaziah of Judah was there too, for he had gone to visit him. So again, to set the scene, Joram is Ahab's son. Ahaziah is Ahab and Jezebel's grandson, their uncle and nephew. So they've had an alliance because they're family. And Joram gets wounded. Ahaziah goes to visit, says, hey, just want to lend any support. I want to make sure you're okay. Is there anything I can do? They're both here in town together. Well, as you would normally have with a city like this, especially anywhere a king would be, that was important strategically, you would have a tower and you'd have a watchman, somebody that their whole job is just to survey everything going on and relay messages. So sure enough, verse 17, the watchman on the tower of Jezreel saw Jehu and his company approaching. So he shouts to Joram, to the king, I see a company of troops coming. The king's like, send out a rider. See if they're coming in peace. I want to know before they get here what they're doing. Because if it's an enemy, I want to beat them out there. I don't want them in my town. If they're friendly, why are they coming? Because I've not gotten a message. You don't send a group of people, you send a single messenger. What's going on? Send somebody out there. Verse 18, so a horseman went out to meet Jehu and said, the king wants to know if you're coming in peace. And Jehu replies, what do you know about peace? Fall in behind me. What's this guy supposed to do? He goes out to meet whoever's coming, realizes it's the commander of the army. The king wants to know if it's peace. What do you know? I'm not talking to you. Get behind me. It's like, ooh, bad news. You tell him. Sure. Yes, sir, boss. You're the commander. I'll do what you say. So the watchman calls out, the messenger got there, but he's not coming back. Imagine you start to get a little nervous. What's going on? Verse 19, so the king sent out a second horseman. He rode up to them and said, you may not have heard this from the first guy. I don't know if he did his job, but the king wants to know, is everything okay? You coming in peace? And again, Jehu answers, what do you know about peace? Fall in behind me. I ain't talking to you either. Get in line. So now here comes Jehu with all the people plus two coming. And by now, the king is like, understandably freaking out because the watchman says, verse 20, the watchman exclaimed, the messenger has met them again, but he isn't returning either. But I have some news, king. My eagle eye has told me it must be Jehu, son of Nimshi, for he is driving like a madman. This is hilarious to me. I'm going to ask a question delicately. Is there anybody in your life who, it doesn't matter what car they're in, you'll know it's them driving by the way they drive? No show of hands or elbows. Let me ask you this, especially for those of you that have or have had young kids, have you ever been off on a day and you're trying to sleep in and you're laying in bed with your eyes closed because you're awake because it's the time you always wake up for work, but you're trying to go back to sleep and you hear footsteps? And you know exactly who it is by the way they're walking. It could be your spouse and like, don't even. Or it could be the kid and it's like, I know which one that is and I know what they're going to ask me. If I close my eyes and be really still, they'll go to my spouse. This is like what the watchman's doing. Jehu has a history of being a crazy driver because it's like, king, I found out it's Jehu. And now the king's really freaking out because the last thing you want to see is your army commander beaten 90, driving like a crazy man to come see you. This is not good news because if it's a victory, he sends a messenger to come out so you can take credit. If he's losing, he sends a messenger for more people. But it's the general that's running, or seemingly. So the king can't take it any longer. Verse 21, he says, quick, get my chariot ready. King Joram commanded. Then King Joram of Israel and King Ahaziah of Judah rode out in their chariots to meet Jehu. They go together. And as it happens, by the time they meet in the middle, they meet at a plot of land, the plot of land that had belonged to Naboth of Jezreel. Remember the story I told you earlier, the guy that had the audacity to say no to Ahab and was killed for it? They met at his property. Just happens to be there. Just happens. And Joram's fed up. I've sent messengers. I'm freaking out. Verse 22, he demands, do you come in peace, Jehu? What is going on? I'm here. Your message must be for me. What do you got to say? And Jehu replies, how can there be peace as long as the idolatry and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel are all around us? Jehu's like, I don't like you. Never mind. I don't like your mama. Those are fighting words. But Joram's not in a position to fight. And I imagine, like we talked about earlier, the eyes light up like, this is not good. Joram's eyes get wide and like, he just insulted my mom, and he's got people, and I am in trouble. And he realizes it in a hurry. Because verse 23, then King Joram doesn't say anything else. He just turns the horses around and gets out of there. He fled shouting to his nephew, King Ahaziah, treason, Ahaziah, run. Like, it's not good. But Jehu is very cool and calm and collected because those guys all go crazy, running one way and whatever. And Jehu just drew his bow, verse 24, and shot Joram between the shoulders. The arrow pierced his heart, and he sank down, dead, in his chariot. One king down. Imagine. I don't like your mom. Guy turns around. That's funny. Over. It's done. Verse 27, when King Ahaziah of Judah saw what was happening, he fled along the road to Beth Hagan, and Jehu rode after him, shouting, shoot him too. This is like high-speed chase chariot edition. You know, it's just like that guy's running, everybody, and Jehu's just screaming, shoot him too. Why? Because it's in a hurry. Because he's not from that kingdom, so he doesn't have all his troops. If he gets past the borders of his own kingdom, it's a war. But you get him now, it'll be fine. And they shot Ahaziah in his chariot at the ascent of Gur near Ebleam. Why we need to know that, I don't know, but it was a thing. He was able to go on as far as Megiddo, but he died there. 2 kings gone. This morning, everything was normal. But Jehu got a message like, hey, you're going to be king next. Well, why wait? But there's somebody else that has to be dealt with. There was somebody else that was in town too, in the hometown. It was Mama, it was Grandma, Jezebel. And that watchman didn't stop watching when he saw the king meet Jehu. I don't know if they were too far away for him to see, but he saw, or word got back somehow, and Jezebel has a decision to make. Is she going to run? It would be a normal, logical thing to do. Obviously, this guy is out for your kingdom. Run. Or perhaps you should dress in clothes of humility, meet him at the city gate, and ask for mercy, because that's all you have left. But Jezebel, she can't quite bring herself to do it because she's always been a force of personality. She's always gotten her way. And even in a moment like this, she thinks she's got one more shot. Verse 30, when Jezebel, the queen mother, heard that Jehu had come to Jezreel, she painted her eyelids, fixed her hair, and sat at a window. She got all pretty because she's going to give it one more shot. I mean, how do you do this? Your son's dead, your grandson's dead, this guy's coming for you. Obviously, she may not have heard that he insulted her to her son before he killed her. It's just, but this is her play, and she's going to go for it. Verse 31, when Jehu entered the gate of the palace, she shouted at him. Not what I would have done, but, have you come in peace, you murderer? You're just like Zimri, who murdered his master. And what she's doing, she's calling back to the way that Ahab's family got in power in the first place. Years before, there was another military takeover in Israel because somebody didn't like the king, decided to kill the king, And for 7 days, they were the king themselves until the army came back, led by Omri, the army commander, who came in and took care of the uprising. But because the guy who assassinated the king wiped out the king's family, which is what always happened, there was nobody else to be king, so they voted the army commander, Omri, to be the king. That's Ahab's dad. It's family history. So Jezebel's like, hey, you remember last time this happened, it didn't work well, but perhaps I could be convinced to make you a legitimate king. All you have to do is to marry a queen. And there's one right here. How convenient. But Jehu's not that guy. And he's not going to go there. Verse 32, Jehu looks up, saw her at the window, and shouted, who is on my side? This is a thing we'll see multiple times with Jehu. Jehu is very much who's on my side. And 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. If you know anything about eunuchs, you know about eunuchs, okay? They are not used to being in positions of power, and they're looking at it and saying, 2 or 3 looked at him like, I'm on your side. Do you know what she did to me? I'm on your side. What do you want, boss? So Jehu has an order. He says, throw her down. So they threw her out the window, and her blood spattered against the wall and on the horses. And, for good measure, Jehu trampled her body under his horse's hooves. It's kind of like that, you're riding along. Did I hit something? Reverse. Yep, I did. That's what happens. She falls down. She's probably dead. Jehu rides over her to make sure she's dead, and then I can imagine probably backed up like, yep, she did, and goes. 2 kings and a queen gone. Now, would you expect some remorse? Some. I don't know. What emotion do you expect from Jehu? There's not much. After this, immediately after this, he just got done running this woman over with his horse and his chariot. Then, next verse, Jehu went into the palace and ate and drank. It's like, all this treason makes me hungry. Bring me a glass of something cool and refreshing. And just sits down and has a meal. Like, I could get used to this palace. Good food, good atmosphere. I like it here. He gets all done with his meal, and then, someone go and bury that woman. She is the daughter of a king. She's a horrible person. I don't like her. But she should at least be buried. If nothing else, I don't want her body and her blood on my palace. It's just not a good look. I don't want to be reminded. Just put her in the ground somewhere. But when they went out to bury her, they found only her skull, her feet, and her hands. I imagine they stopped looking after that. I would. When they returned and told Jehu, he stated, well, this fulfills the message from the Lord, which he spoke through Elijah, his servant Elijah from Tishbe. At the plot of land in Jezreel, dogs will eat Jezebel's body. Her remains will be scattered like dung on the plot of Jezreel so that no one will be able to recognize her. And this is not Jehu being this devout Jehovah follower, like, well, God said this was going to happen. Jehu is more one of those guys that's like, I'll take anything that works for me. Yeah, things like this happened after all. Remember what Elijah said. Because I think Jehu was with Ahab that day at that plot of land when Elijah said, you killed Naboth, and it's not just enough that you killed him, you stole from him after you killed him. God's not giving you warnings anymore. It's over. The way you're going is going to end up poorly. This is the way it's going to go. I can see it because you won't change what you're doing. And it would not be surprising that the army commander would be with the king, or if nothing else, word spread around the kingdom that this was what was going to happen. And Jehu was like, well, things like that happen. But I think Jehu started thinking about Jezebel's last words. Well, before, I imagine that was her last word as she was thrown down. Before that, where she's like, you remember what happened last time? He's like, yeah. Bad woman. Glad she's gone. But good advice. Thanks. So he sets in motion a plan because, chapter 10, verse 1, Ahab had 70 sons living in the city of Samaria, more the capital city or another fortified city. So Jehu letters and sent them to Samaria. He sends letters to everybody, the elders and officials of the city, and to the guardians of King Ahab's sons. This is what he writes. He said, "The king's sons are with you, and you have at your disposal chariots, horses, a fortified city, and weapons. Hey, good news, you've got options. You have 70 people, because no doubt by now you've heard that the king is dead. You have 70 options. You have a good city, you have a good place, you don't have to feel overwhelmed. You have everything you need for a battle. So here's what I want you to do. As soon as you receive this letter, select the best qualified of your master's sons to be your king, and prepare to fight for Ahab's dynasty." Jehu's like, "I'm king. I like this being king. But I understand not everybody will want that. So why don't you pick your guy and we'll fight? And whoever wins, cool." We have to understand something. These 70 guys are like sea level and below, because there's already been 2 sons of Ahab now. One that already died, then this guy Joram. So they're the minor leagues of king people. So the people that get this letter, they read it, and they are, verse 4, they're paralyzed with fear and said, "We've seen that 2 kings can't stand against this man. What can we do?" Essentially, they start looking at each other and say, "Do you care enough to die for this?" So I don't. I'm not a big fan of, I had some benefits of being close to Ahab and everything like that, but I don't care that much. You willing to die for it? Because I'm not. Well, I'm not. So they send back word to Jehu. The palace and city administrators, verse 5, together with the elders and guardians of the king's sons, sent this message to Jehu: "We're your servants, and we will do anything you tell us. We will not make anyone king, so do whatever you think is best. Before we fight, we surrender. Whatever you want, boss, we're fine. Congratulations, long live the king." Whatever it was, they're not doing it. So Jehu responds with a second letter, verse 6. "If you are on my side," there's that phrase again, "and are going to obey me, here's my rule. Just bring the heads of your master's sons to me at Jezreel by this time tomorrow." As soon as you read this, you have 24 hours to complete your mission. Good luck. Now the 70 sons of the king were being cared for by the leaders, by the leaders of Samaria, where they had been raised since childhood. I want you to picture this. You get this letter and it says, "All right, you want to prove your loyalty to me? You know those 70 guys that you've been responsible to be caring for, that you've known since childhood? Kill them all, cut their heads off, bring them to me. Then I'll know." Implication being, if you don't, I will come and do that myself, and I'll take yours for good measure. Imagine what they feel as they do this. But they look at it and think, what option do we have? So, verse 7, when the letter arrived, the leaders killed all 70 of the king's sons. They placed their heads in baskets and presented them to Jehu at Jezreel. And a messenger went to Jehu and said, "They've brought the heads of the king's sons." So Jehu ordered, "You know what? Pile them in 2 heaps at the entrance of the city gate. Leave them there till morning. I'm tired. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Just leave them piled up." This guy is brutal. But he's politically brilliant for a reason we'll see in just a moment, because he knows this is going to cause a commotion, because 2 piles, 70 total, 2 piles of 35 heads are going to cause, a commotion. And people are already wondering, because they're living like, the old king's dead and his nephew's dead from the other kingdom, and Jezebel's dead, and this guy's king now, and we don't know how the administration's going to work. So they're just walking on eggshells. And in the morning, as you can imagine, there's a crowd. So verse 9, Jehu walks out in the morning, goes out and spoke to the crowd that had gathered around them being the heads. Like, "I think that's Bob." It was Bob. He says, "You're not to blame. I'm the one who conspired against my master and killed him. I'm the Grinch who stole Christmas, and I'm not sorry. I did it. It's me. But," Jehu continues, I have a question. Who killed all these? I was sleeping in the castle last night. I didn't go to Samaria. I didn't do all this. Oh, wait. That's right. We're all in this together. We're all guilty. I don't know if he's saying it or just said it. I don't know. But he's like, we're all guilty now. So there's no need for anybody to, I don't know, come after me and kill me for my crimes because we're all guilty, aren't we? We're all co-conspirators. So why don't we just leave it be that I'm the king and everything's going to be fine? And in this way, he's completely neutralized any chance of a rebellion on Ahab's family's behalf. And he continues, he's willing to leverage anything. Verse 10, he says, you can be sure that the message of the Lord that was spoken concerning Ahab's family will not fail. The Lord declared this through his servant Elijah that this would happen. Then Jehu, verse 11, kills all who were left of Ahab's relatives living in Jezreel, all his important officials, his personal friends, and his priests. So Ahab was left without a single survivor. Technically, there's one in another kingdom. We'll get to that in a little bit. Everybody, if you even smiled at Ahab one morning, you're done. Because this is a full and total purge. Everybody is gone. Jehu is brutal. He's efficient. He's politically brilliant in a sad, sick, twisted way, and brutal. And he's not quite done. Verse 18, then Jehu called a meeting of all the people in the city and said to them, Ahab's worship of Baal was nothing compared to the way I will worship him. You know how he was kind of back and forth sometimes. He tried to listen to a prophet. Jezebel had to get him straight, and that's all back and forth. He's been doing this. No more. We're going to be serious. Not going to play around anymore. Therefore, summon all the prophets and worshipers of Baal and call together all his priests. See to it that every one of them comes, for I am going to offer a great sacrifice to Baal, and anyone who fails to come will be put to death. At this point, would you doubt the man? He's willing to kill anybody. And so they're like, yes, sir, you got it. But there's something they don't know. Because Jehu's cunning plan was to destroy all the worshipers of Baal. Explain why in a second. Then Jehu ordered, prepare a solemn assembly to worship Baal. So they did. He sent messengers throughout all Israel, summoning those who worshipped Baal. They all came. Not a single one remained behind. And they filled the temple of Baal from one end to the other. And just to make sure, verse 22, Jehu instructed the keeper of the wardrobe, be sure that every worshiper of Baal wears one of these robes. We're going to get fancy. We're going to put it all on because I want to make sure that we're all doing this first class. I told you Ahab messed this up. I'm not going to. We're all getting dressed up and doing this right. But you can imagine he had a reason for what he was doing. Then Jehu went into the temple of Baal with Jehonadab, son of Rechab, and Jehu said to the worshipers of Baal, make sure no one who worships the Lord is here. Only those who worship Baal. Again, he's politically brilliant because he knows that there are people who are so afraid of him or looking to get in good with the new king that they will do anything to put themselves in good position, even worship a false god if it keeps them alive or whatever. And he's like, you look around, you get all those Jehovah followers, we don't want them. If they came from your hometown, you know they're not legit, kick them out. I don't want them here. So we're going to do it. And of course they did. Because what do religious people, including us, if we're honest, when we think we're going to get power sometimes, if we're not listening to what we're supposed to be doing, we get all excited. This is going to be us. We're going to be in charge now. We can do whatever we want. So they're willing to do whatever they are, whatever they have to do. Sorry, that's a little too close to some of us. So they were all inside, verse 24, the temple to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had stationed 80 of his men outside the building and had warned them, if you let anyone escape, you will pay for it with your own life. It's like, come here, guys, come here. Simple instructions and motivating. They die, you live. They live, you die. Any questions? Nope. They are ready. Again, he is brutal. Because verse 25, as soon as Jehu had finished sacrificing the burnt offering, he commanded his guards and officers, go in, kill all of them. Don't let a single one escape. So they killed them all with their swords, and the guards and officers dragged their bodies outside. Then Jehu's men went to the innermost fortress of the temple of Baal. They dragged out the sacred pillar used in the worship of Baal and burned it. And then, verse 27, they smashed the sacred pillar, wrecked the temple of Baal, converting it into a public toilet. And this is one of those things, I don't know why they chose to write it, as it remains to this day. It's almost like one of those, it's like a travel guide. And if you ever find yourself in this area and you think, hey, where's the nearest public washroom? Somebody will direct you to the abandoned fortress and temple of Baal. Why do you need to write that? I don't know. But it's there. It's why you should read the scriptures. It's hilarious sometimes. But no, I won't say it that way. This is effective because it's not going to be built again because nobody's going to rebuild that. Not on that site. It just is what it is. But before you go and think, I get it. Jehovah's one of those crazy God people because he just wants his God, and that's what crazy religious people do. That's not who Jehu is. Jehu is an opportunist who sees his chance and takes it. And Jehu literally hated Jezebel. Don't know why, but from all we've seen, he probably had pretty good reason. And Jezebel had brought Baal worship in, and he was getting rid of everything that was related to Ahab and Jezebel, including the God they worshipped, snuffing it all out. But it wasn't because he served God. It was because he served Jehu, and he wanted what he wanted. And anybody that was on his side, as we saw a couple times, they were good. And if that meant God, if that meant anybody, it didn't matter. Because we'll see, although in verse 28, in this way, Jehu destroyed every trace of Baal worship from Israel. Verse 29, he did not, however, destroy the gold calves at Bethel and Dan, with which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to sin. It's one of those classic ones of, I don't care who you worship. You pray whoever you want to. Just say yes when I tell you to do something, and we're cool. I don't care. If God's on my side, cool. Big fan. If he's not, I'll figure it out later. I'm not worried about it. Because I'm worried about Jehu. This guy is the classic opportunist. But he's in power now. In some ways, he's better than Ahab and Jezebel, and in some ways, he's the same new king, same as the old king in some ways. He's not a good man, but he's the one who brought about the fall of the house of Ahab. It's done, except for one person. We'll talk about it in a minute. But why? Why does all this happen? It depends on your point of view. If you're on Jezebel's side, like, why are they doing so many horrible things to us? We're just in king, we're just in power. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? But everybody else in the kingdom that's not on their side, hasn't in their inner circle, and has been oppressed, brutalized, imprisoned, robbed from, murdered for years, has been waiting and crying out, saying, how long? How long do we have to wait till this is made right? How much longer are they going to get away with this? And Ahab dies, yeah, but his son takes over, and Jezebel's still there, and it's infuriating because I'm just waiting for somebody to show up and make it right. And it finally does. After all the warnings, over and over, Elijah, Elisha, Micaiah, other prophets unnamed, just with messages of, hey, knock it off, it's going to get you in trouble. It leads down a bad path, stop. They wouldn't listen. I think it's because Ahab, Jezebel, their kids, unfortunately, forgot this principle. Simply this: consequences may play catch up, but they never lose. May take a while. You get away with it for a while, and you think, hey, not so bad. It's worked so far. I'm still in power. I've still got it. But consequences, it was the message of Elijah, Elisha, the rest of the prophets. Hey, it's going to catch up. It's going to catch up. God's telling you it's going to catch up. You can trust he knows. Whether you want to blame him for your demise or just that this is the way of the world, because kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall. But this is what's going to happen. Consequences may play catch up, but they never lose. And they never got that. They never paid attention to that lesson. So I imagine for a lot of people in the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, maybe not Judah, we'll talk about that in a little while. In the kingdom of Israel, there was they felt like you and I feel when we watch the movie or the TV show where the bad guy gets it. Not that they were rooting for some spectacular demise, but just for somebody to step up and make it right. And the moment came. And all the waiting, the consequences finally caught up. But to go back to the other question I asked you earlier, if you're in that position right now, where you're the one waiting, where you're wondering when it's going to be made right, can I just encourage you with this? Consequences may play catch up, but they never lose. It's going to happen. I don't know when, but it will. It's not going to last forever. On the flip side, can I speak to hopefully none of us in this room if we're the ones doing wrong? If we're the ones hurting people? If we're the ones that are getting away with it for now? I did that and nobody caught me. Nothing happened with it. Can I just take the opportunity to warn all of us? Stop. Those consequences may be behind. They may play catch up, but they never lose. Stop. Make it right. This is your chance. The chances that Ahab and Jezebel had so many times and refused to listen, you have that right now. Stop. But if you're doing right, okay? If you're doing right and you're saying, great story, appreciate that, but here's the deal. It's not just I'm waiting for bad situations and I'm not hurting people. In fact, I'm doing right and I'm wondering when's it going to work out? Because what's the point of doing right? Because I ain't seeing nothing from it. Consequences may play catch up, but they never lose. It's coming. Okay? I wish, sincerely, I wish I could take you to a calendar and mark the date on the calendar and say, now, this is the day. I wish that I could tell you even a region, a time in your life that it's going to happen. But I can't promise you that. I can't promise a time in your life. I can't even promise that it's in your lifetime. I wish I could, but I can't. But I can tell you that consequences may play catch up, but they never lose. And if I could just for a minute talk to those of us, we've decided to put our faith in Jesus. We've decided to follow him, and we're waiting. We all know that there was a time where we weren't doing right, and the delay, we look back and we call grace. And we are thankful for it because we weren't always so on top of everything. And we come and we celebrate it every Sunday. We sing songs about it. During the week, we pray and we're thankful and we read the stories. And we're thankful for that word grace. And grace sometimes is just a delay of the consequences. And God is looking at some of us right now and saying, look, I know it's not right. I know you're going through it. I know it hurts, but what I'm asking you to do is pass on that grace I gave you to those people, because just like he kept warning Ahab and Jezebel over and over, it wasn't because he hated them. It was because he loved them and wanted them to be right too. And he looks at those of us who are on his side, if I can use Jehu's term. God looks at us on his side and says, I want you to pass that grace along. Be patient with the consequences because I'm doing a big work here. Will you trust me? So if you find yourself in a position where you're worried that God will be the one that lets you down, he won't. He won't fail. He's done this before. He's been faithful through generations. Why would he fail now? He won't. You can hold on to his promises because he's kept his word. To us, to them, it may just take a little waiting until it all works out, until one day it's the beauty of God. He doesn't settle for making things right. In addition, he's promised that one day he'll make things new, starting again. And it'll be an amazing day, but it's a day we may just have to wait a little longer to see, to hold on a little longer until we get there. They may play catch up, but they won't lose. Now, if you followed me, I've promised several times that we're going to get to the other person that's left in the southern kingdom, because news, if we were in the moment, news is traveling even now and reaching to Athaliah, Ahab and Jezebel's daughter, in the southern kingdom. She's finding out what's going on. Will she learn the lesson? Will she respond? That's the story for another week. Come back next week and we'll talk about it, or join us online. But for today, let's pray.